Hailing all nerds, this is More Than Dice, the podcast where we dive deep into the realms of everything nerdy. Whether you're a nerd culture connoisseur, a tabletop titan, a miniature gaming marveler, or just someone who proudly embraces their inner geek, this is the podcast for you. And now here's your hosts, Gonzo, Nerd, and Mizzy.
Welcome to another episode of More Than Dice. I'm Gonzo.
I'm Captain Mizzy.
And Nerd is off for the night because we have two special guests. We have people that are multi-billionaires on the show today. They've been in the gaming industry for roughly 375 years and have made billions doing everything nerdy within the gaming realm. Jake, say hi.
I was going to say, everybody knows that the money spinner is working in Toy Soldiers.
Yes. Yeah. So we have Dave Taylor and Jake on here from Build Paint Play. We're going to be talking about the evolution of mini games. Before we do that, we need to get to all the sponsors and all the business. We want to send a huge thank you out to Turbo Dork Games for sponsoring the channel. If you like their paints and you like metallic paints, you like turbo shifting paints, you like generic paints of metal type, they are the people to go to. Their new dropper bottles are fantastic. If you haven't used them, I wish a lot of people would go to them because they are really good. I know that there's going to be a bunch of different things coming up with their paints. They've shown me a few things, but I can't talk about it. I've been sworn to secrecy. Yeah. Well, you went to Gamma and you probably got to see it. Greg and them just showed you pictures and they were like, you didn't see this. I'm like, okay, I didn't see this. But we really like those guys. They're a lot of fun.
I'm hoping that that they're ready to sort of release the Malev wrap at Adepticon.
Oh yeah, I'm ready to see what they're going to bring because it'll be interesting.
Exciting. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Also, guys, as usual, as you know, we always want to give a shout out. Mizzy, do we have any shout outs this week for anybody? Do we have anybody?
We do not.
This is the first time in a while. We did find out, by the way, what happened to Gene Hackman and his wife. A very, very sad incident. We big shout out to them. Family takes care of them and takes care of everything that went on, and everybody gets a little bit of peace out of that. But there's a tradition here at More Than Dice. Jake has never been on here. Dave has, and so Dave is a veteran, and he will definitely make millions from our show because we're so popular. Jake, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm just drinking iced tea.
Sweetened or unsweetened?
Normal iced tea, not like Southern sweet iced tea. And it's in my Gen Con cup, so.
I was going to say sweetened or Long Island.
No. just regular. It's just a pure leaf iced tea that I have in a cup. That's it.
All right. Mizzy, what are you drinking tonight?
I am double fisting it with all the hydration. So I've got some energy water and some Gatorade.
All right. Dave?
I am not at all sponsored by Coca-Cola.
I am double fisting it with Mizzy also with some good old H2O, but to celebrate our friends, I busted out the bottle of cognac, some Remy Martin cognac to celebrate with everybody that I will be sipping on during the show. Yeah, I usually don't drink, so maybe this is a tradition. But guys, we appreciate you coming on the show. Jake and Dave are longtime friends. We met a while back, worked together. Yeah, we met at Adepticon. That's where Jake was like, please, can we be on More Than Dice? And can you sponsor our podcast and put us on your network? And I'm like, you're fucking Jake and Dave. We can't make you any more millions that you make now. So and that's how this
being like, where's all this money that he's talking about? and my answer is going to be like, I'd like to know also.
So guys, as usual with us, if you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. If you can do something, do something. And if you can't, find somebody that will, because we've got to look after each other right now. This time in everybody's lives, we've got to have each other's back 100%. So, from all of us, cheers.
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 Plancha.
That brings back memory. Kathy used to say that all the time when she was on.
One of my favorites. Like I lived in Ireland for for a chunk of time, so I loved it there.
So today's podcast, we're going to be talking about the evolution of wargaming. And I know this is going to be like a really big, broad subject, but we've got a really diverse crowd right here. I've been wargaming for 50,000 years, I think. Dave is like 10 BC. Jake, is like 20 BC.
I'm a Gen Xer.
Yeah. And Mizzy, she just started 5 years ago, so we've got this big brawl. But I know this is kind of weird, but Dave, some people may not know who you are. Who are you, and why are you in the miniature gaming scene?
Yeah, Dave.
That's a really good question. Who am I? I don't know the answer to that. No, I've been playing Toy Soldiers, messing around with tabletop wargaming since '91. So that was my first year in college. I had done some role playing before with friends, but was walking down the street with one of them. We popped into a hobby shop. We checked out some of their minis and was like, "Oh, this could be cool for our D&D games." And then I looked at them, and there were some sci-fi ones as well. I was like, "Oh, these look pretty cool." And we walked further on. We went into another game store, and they had some very cool chess sets. And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to collect some of those other models and paint them up and make a chess set out of them." And I did that. And then I was like, "Oh, there's this box of 30 guys. They're called Space Marines."
The
That's kind of weird.
RTBO1.
RTBO1 box. And but 30 of them, I just need to get 2 other models, and that's like 2 sides of chess. So I painted up another like 2 chess sides, did some conversion work and to make the different chess pieces, and painted those up. And then when the next time I went back into the store, the guy was like, "Oh, how's all your painting going?" I said, "Oh, it's going pretty well." And then he goes, "You've almost got enough for an army." And I was like, "An army? What's that all about?" And he goes, "Let me show you this book, Rogue Trader."
Here, kid, try this heroin.
Yeah, it was like, oh, this is all downhill from there. And so, like 3 years later, I was working for Games Workshop, and worked in retail for a few years, and then moved into the promotion studio in Australia, and organized games days and grand tournaments, and worked on basically published the Australian version of White Dwarf magazine. Then I moved to the US, did a whole bunch of similar things here, and left Workshop in 2008, the end of 2008. Worked for Wargames Illustrated magazine for 5 years, and then 11 years ago now started my own business, basically consulting with small miniatures companies, helping them fill gaps in their skill sets, taking all the things that I'd learned over the previous 20 years, and doing that sort of thing. So, and now I'm also publishing books about miniatures, and doing a live stream with Jake. So there we go.
So
there's my intro.
So you made your first billion and flew over to the States, and you were okay, and you've got yourself set up.
I actually built a land bridge.
Oh, okay.
I prefer to walk.
You prefer to walk.
Rather than fly. So,
That's why he's out of money.
Yeah, he's out of money.
Stephen Wright said it the best way back in the day, which is everywhere is walking distance if you have the time.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I did. Yes, I don't think I've checked my bank account recently, and I have tens of dollars. It's amazing. So I'm glad that this is the trajectory that I'm on.
Jake, can you give us a little bit of background on who you are and what you're doing, and how you made your first billions?
Sure. Well, the dream was really cool. That's how the first billions came up. It was really, really cool. And I woke up and I can't remember what the idea was. So, um, I probably got into gaming, probably similar to Dave. I think I got into D&D when I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. And I remember painting like metal Ral Partha models with like Tester's paint in the basement, and my mom opening the door and being like, "Oh my God, you're gonna kill yourself here! Open a window because it's all like you're not supposed to paint in an enclosed space with all those paints." And then I think I was at like some hobby D&D weekend thing in like Western Mass when I was in middle school, and there was a guy selling just random hobby stuff that I had never seen before, and much like Dave, I grabbed the RTBO1 box. It had that great, Crimson Fists artwork where they're fighting a bunch of hazy shapes in the smoke and they're all like piled up like to the last man. And I grabbed that box and this guy came over and I was like, "What are these?" And he was like, "These are Space Marines." And he started talking and I just drifted away and was like, "Oh, I'm going to paint these guys. These are so cool." So I grabbed that box of guys and went home and painted them up and painted them all random, like literally just like I think on the back they gave you some samples. I painted like a Space Wolf and a Crimson Fist and an Ultramarine and I didn't know you had to make like an army. I just painted a bunch of random dudes. And then a couple years later, my cousin came over the house and was like, "Oh, you play this game?" And I was like, "There's a game?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, so probably took a weirder approach than Dave. I think the first game I played we played Epic. I remember we bought the big Space Marine box that came with like orcs and Space Marines, and my brother wanted to play, and he's a couple years younger than me, and I was like, "You can be the orcs." Like I was like, "I'm taking the Space Marines. You can be the orcs." And then I was back from college, probably a couple years later than Dave. I was probably like mid to late 90s, and we were walking around, and there was a store in like near my hometown. We were walking around, and they had Warhammer stuff in the window, and I remember being like, "Oh, I know, that's a Warhound. Like I've seen that giant robot. It was the Armor Cast Warhound in the window.
Oh yeah,
One that looks like a dog. I love it." So we
Yep.
like we went in there, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." And I was like, "Hey, you have the Warhound?" And he's like, "Yeah." We started talking about it, and then I realized they had all this like Warhammer stuff, and kind of got back into it. My friends were like, "What is this stuff?" We started playing it, and then there was a great hobby shop in my mall when I was a kid called Eric Fuchs, and they had like a lot of us. They had like model train sets and rocketry kits and like a spinning rack of D&D modules, and I remember I loved model kits, so I built like the USS Enterprise and stuff like that. So finding something that was painting miniatures, which I was doing with D&D stuff, but then also building model kits, I was like, "Oh, this is like super cool." So all my friends got into it, and then when they opened up a Games Workshop in our area, I was shopping there all the time, and they were like, "Oh, we need a part-timer," and I was like, "I already have a full-time gig, but if you guys want to hire me." And then within 6 months of that, I ended up graduating college, and then they offered me a full-time position, and then I was a manager for them for 5 or 6 years, and that's where I met Dave. Like he was working at the GW US office at the HQ in Glen Burnie, Maryland, and we kind of hit it off. And Dave's the best. I tell people all the time. My favorite story about Dave is the first day I met him. I had met him, and he was doing something, and I was walking around the offices, and I came to his desk not knowing it was his, and he had a row of paints across his desk. And I was like looking at it, and I'm like, "All right, so that bottle is definitely Chaos Black, and that bottle is definitely definitely Skull White." And I was like, "I don't know." I'm looking, I'm like, "I don't understand what this is." So Dave goes over, he's like, "Did you figure it out yet?" And I went, "What?" He goes, "This is my grayscale." And it was like, no lie, it was like 40 something bottle. It was insane. And he was like, it was a lie. It's close. It was like 36 or something. And he was like,
12.
"Dude, you're wrong. Get out of here." So he was like, "Oh, so this is Chaos Black. This is Chaos Black with 2 drops of Skull White. This is Chaos Black with 6 drops of Skull White, all the way to like, this is Skull White with 6 drops of Chaos Black. This is Skull White with 2 drops of Chaos Black, and that's Skull White." And like, he was painting pre-Heresy Death Guard. And if anybody has seen Dave's stuff in White Dwarf back in the day, nobody was doing that. Like, so he was, building everything up and layering it by hand. And this is the old bolter shell pots that were like, like there was like, "Hey, here's the range. Like, good luck." But yeah, really, really kind of fell in love with it. And then working for GW, like obviously working with newer materials, like understanding that there's water-based acrylics that are way easier to work with, and like
Yep.
how to prime your models. And kids today will never understand the ease that you can paint a yellow army. Back in the day, it was a nightmare. The only yellow model I've ever painted at the GWA was, as a store manager, we would always get the new releases, and you had to paint them up and put them in the case, right? So we
Mhm.
got Lysander. I don't know if you remember when they released him.
Oh, yep.
So we got Lysander, and I built him, and he's metal, and he's a big chunk. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna paint him, and he's gotta be an Impro Fist. Primed him black. And that's
Oh,
all we had. And then it was like, I'm gonna paint him brown, and then I'm gonna paint him like tan, then I'm gonna paint him like an ochre, then I'm gonna paint him like an orange, and I'm gonna paint him yellow. Like, he's got to be like 13 layers of paint, and he looks great. But I was like, I'm never painting another Imperial Fist. That'll never happen. But now it's easy. I did a Squadron Imperial Fist for a guy, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna spray him white, and I'm gonna use like speed paint on him, and they look like $1 million. I edged them out and stuff, and I was like, kids will never know that you kids today with your MySpace and your yellow paints, like, it's hilarious. But yeah, after working for GW for years, Dave and I left about the same time, kind of what we call the dark ages, the dark times.
Yep.
The dark times are basically like 2008 to about 2015, 16. And then they've kind of gone up on their trajectory. And I worked, in Fortune 500 for a long time. And a bunch of us are just kind of sitting around whinging about, bad stores and bad experiences we've had. Like, oh, the staff doesn't know anything, or they don't carry this thing that I like, and nobody knows anything about anything other than Yu-Gi-Oh! And a buddy of ours was like, why don't you guys just open a store? And we were like, that's a really good idea. So we opened a retail store almost 8 years ago now, and we're right in Metro Boston. We're in Quincy, Mass, city of presidents, and it's been a blast. I've gotten to do a lot of stuff and kind of got back into the scene, and gotten to hang out with friends again, like on a professional level, not just us, screwing around. But yeah, it's been a ton of fun. Like I love what I do, and it's still work. It's a lot of hard work, but I love it, and it's been fun so far. Knock on wood. Hopefully nothing else goes sideways. But
Missy, when did you? I mean, they probably don't know. I mean, our audience probably does. But when did you start doing your miniature gaming? And when did you make your first million?
What millions? I am poor, and
He's
I-
obsessed with the dollars.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's from.
capitalism has gone to this guy's head.
right? So I got started into wargaming when I met you. I was a nerd, but I was not this type of nerd.
That
It is
sounded like
all
an accurate
Gonzo's fault.
First one's free, little lady.
Yep, that's pretty much.
Oh.
Your Honor, Exhibit A.
Yeah, I gave her. I had a Troll Blood army from a friend of mine that passed away, and I gave her the Troll Blood army, and she was like, "These are cool," and that's how it's gone. And now she's doing.
Those models are right there on my wall.
Cool. Nice.
All Gonzo's fault. We've heard that before. Yes, Shadow Sword. I get blamed for a lot of shit.
Damn it, Gonzo. Now
Yeah.
I have a nerd crack obsession.
Yep.
I'm running out of room for all my models.
I mean, there's
Just-
worse things to get into.
I just want to say a quick shout out to Josh Potter, JP Got Rockets. Hey,
Hey, JP.
he's in the chat.
Yeah.
So-
So I was with y'all that like you and Dave, where I was, walking through a store, played D&D, had the Ralpartha metal miniatures, so on and so forth, and that's where I got started. And my first game, with a lot of us back in that time, was Warhammer. It was Warhammer for the most part for a lot of people for their first starting thing. JP says thanks, Dave. We started that, and I remember, building the armies and getting stuff and going to GTs, and you would walk in with your Tyranid army, and it's like, oh, here's only 175 models to put on the board, and so on and so forth, and building stuff. But the games that we played back then have changed so much, and the players have changed a lot, with the economy the way it is, and so on and so forth. There's been a large change, because some people can't afford a 40K army, to play at the 2000 point or whatever it is now. That people have been changing their games up, and from Jake, from you being a store owner and Dave, you working through this completely, what's the start of when we were playing, and we did cover some of this in the pre-ramble when you were talking about War Machine, Jake, the size of armies, because that's been a huge change, and just in the last like 5 or 6 years, that's been a big change.
Um,
Oh, Jake is
Jake,
did.
Damn it,
you
I
muted
did it
again.
again. I keep hitting with my elbow when I grab my drink. I think there's
It's a
been
sign. It's a sign you should be quiet.
I mean, nobody believes that, Dave. Come on. I think the big thing now is there's a lot of choices for people, right? Like
Yes.
back in the day, like if we're all playing Warhammer, because let's be honest, for a long time the only real game was Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and then
Yes.
you got Warhammer 40K after that, and even the first Rogue Trader game. I tell people all the time, I'm like, Rogue Trader or 40K first edition is not Warhammer. It's a totally different game. It's basically squad based D&D. Like it's awesome, but it's not. You would not recognize anything Warhammer about it other than like there's like dice and there are space orcs. Like there's nothing else that makes sense about it that you would recognize. Even the Space Marines aren't Space Marines. They're like Navy SEALs with combat drugs. Like they're just guys with better equipment.
Just
But
I'm just going to jump in here quickly with a story I haven't been able to recount for a long time, but playing a Rogue Trader game, I had my Space Marines against an Imperial Guard army back before, like, so heavy bolters had a rule called following fire, and basically when you like shot somebody and killed somebody, you could try and shoot somebody within like a couple of inches.
Mm-hmm.
I managed to kill 43 Imperial Guardsmen with one heavy bolter guy in one shooting phase.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
It's chained along the thing. It's ridiculous. It should never, like, statistically, it's almost impossible, but it happened. And yeah, so that's a kind of wild, wacky weirdness that could happen in a game. So of course, like, he still had 100 models on the board, but
You wipe out half of it with one guy.
yeah, it was pretty crazy. But yeah,
nuts.
Yeah, I mean,
I couldn't tell you what the result of that game was. It doesn't matter. It was 43.
That is a win.
Because I remember, talking about evolution of the game, I got Necrons when they first came out, and they were still the metal, and there wasn't the rods, and you had the swarms were just little metal bugs that you placed on units, and it dropped their armor by 3. So if you had 3 on them, they were like 9 on their armor, and you just like walk up with a knife and just kill a land raider in one hit type thing.
The destroyer looks like a ski tricycle.
Yes.
Oh, dude, those old models they're so weird.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was my first thing of going, oh, my army is now obsolete. I have to go buy something else, because they didn't have the rules for that for the longest time.
But
for
even
Necrons.
like a big game would have been Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and even
Yes.
then, you're talking like 2 or 3 line units. So you had like, I have 2 units of spearmen and I have a unit of archers, and then you had like a bolt thrower or something, and you typically had like a boss and a wizard. So you still weren't talking about that many models. It was 30 or 40 guys total, maybe 50 if you had a big army.
And one guy was a centerpiece. Like, I had wood elves, and so the elf on the green dragon, that was the big centerpiece.
Yep. But even that was later. Like, you didn't get the big centerpiece models until probably what, Dave, like 4th edition or 5th edition?
Yeah, probably 4th.
So
yeah, early
but
4th.
yeah. But yeah, not a lot of options. And then, in the preamble we talked about it, like getting into War Machine. I remember when that came out, we were all like, oh, that's kind of cool. And so like then you had War Machine, which was a skirmish game. So you were talking anywhere between 5 and 14 models. It wasn't huge. And again, you get some big centerpiece guys with like the Warjacks and stuff. And then you got like X-Wing. X-Wing to me was always it was a board game. It wasn't really a miniatures game, because everything came pre-painted and pre-assembled, and like it was just a board game. Like
you put it on a peg and then you move.
Yeah, like there wasn't really any hobby to it, so it felt different. Again, I'm not yucking. It's a good game. A lot of people really liked it, but it didn't like feel the same.
Yep.
And again, that was a pretty small, model count if you were going to look at it that way. The only thing that was really big was if you did any kind of the any historicals. Like if you played, like I know Warhammer used to have the Warhammer historical line, and then there were a bunch of other companies that just made, steel pikemen or Napoleonics or whatever. So, but those were super fringy. Like that was up there with like being into rocketry. Like it was this own weird thing that only a certain group did, and it was really hard to. There was nowhere to be like, I'm gonna go get that stuff. Like that wasn't a thing. So, I think when GW dynamited themselves in the early to mid 2000s, like 2006, 2007, 2008, there was a lot of decisions that were not the best, and they literally were like, well, we'll just get rid of these guys, and then those guys were like, cool, we can do this, and then they like created their own competition by either people leaving the company or like getting let go from the company, or them being like, oh, we dissolved your position, and you're like, oh, what are you going to do now? It's like, I guess I'll go start my own miniatures company. So
Yep.
And that's when you got all this other stuff, like you got
Warlord
Bolt
Games.
Action, and you got Warlord Games, you got everything that they do. You got Flames of War, you got Team Yankee, you got War Machine was on, I think, Mark II at that time, or just about to do Mark II. So that was like growing. You had the first iteration of Dust. You also had stuff like Confrontation.
Oh man, that's
you had like AT-43, which is to this day like one of the coolest games ever. So you had more kind of choices coming along. And then up until now, I would say now is probably it's the golden age of gaming. Like who knows how much longer this is going to last with a lot of the changes that are coming, but I think right now you've never been so spoiled for change. It's like Dave was saying, you could play that 1940 Doom and be like, oh, I have 3 models.
1490.
Sorry, 1490 Doom.
Very different feel.
Yeah, sure. But you can run 3 models, or you're like, oh, let's play. Even right now with Games Workshop, you could be like, I'm gonna play a Imperial Knights Combat Patrol.
Yeah, because I mean that was the one thing that was interesting. Because when I first started playing 40K in fantasy, I was at the time where the stuff was starting to grow, and then things were getting exponentially. The armies were getting exponentially larger. I mean,
5th, 6th, 7th. Yeah, 5th, 6th, 7th is when it like blew up.
yeah, and like I remember this one guy was playing an orc, and he's like, I have 300 models for my orc army, and I'm like, what? And it like it was just outrageously. The entire army was just so much. I'm like, I can't afford that. And it kind of put me off on the game. And, I sold all my stuff off because they were like, you've got to buy 6 more units to make, the standard point value for 40K or fantasy. And I was just like, I'm broke. I'm a broke bitch. I can't afford this. And so I sold them all off.
What about your billions?
Y'all make the billions. I only make, singles at the bar.
Wait, hang on.
Dave will Venmo you.
Dave will Venmo me a dollar bill. But I mean, and that's where it kind of started exploding. And that's also another reason why I jumped to War Machine when it first came out, because just like you, 10, 15, 20 models, cool. I can afford that and I can play that. And I don't have to spend, 45 hours or whatever playing one game of 40K, because I've noticed that through these years, the games are getting smaller, time-wise, smaller and smaller. I mean, because we don't have a lot of time. I mean, we're all stupid busy. And if we're going to get together and we're going to play a game that's over 2 hours, we're going to set a block of time, and it's going to be an event type thing that we're going to do. Because we've got games, like standard 40K or standard War Machine, 100 points is roughly, 2+ hours. 2+, give or take, a little bit of time depending on how it is. That's a standard. Yeah. What is the standard like right now for like 40K?
So the problem is that there is no standard, because it completely depends on who's playing, how well they know their army, and if their opponent knows their army. So we had 2 kids come in the other day, and one guy is he's a great guy. I know him. He comes in the shop all the time, knows his army, is super excited to play. And this other kid who's been in a couple times, but we didn't really know what to expect. So the 2 of them set up, and they've been in my store I'm like, hey guys, what's up? And I'm doing stuff. Like I'm busy talking to customers, whatever. So I walk by the table, and the guy that I know is kind of like doing one of these, like kind of rolling his eyes. And I'm like, hey man, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, everything's good. And I'm like, okay. So I kind of leave, and I'm doing some more stuff. So they were there for 3 hours, and I go, how'd the game go? And he goes, dude, I don't want to ever play that guy again. And I went, what happened? He goes, we got to the bottom of turn 2. And I was like, you've been playing for 3 hours. He's like, yeah, man, like he doesn't really know the rules that well, and he was being like really specific about stuff, and he wasn't really sure how like stuff would interact. And so to answer your question, I would say that the expectation is you should be able to play a standard game of 40K. So 2,000-ish points.
Mhm.
You should be able to do that in about the same time. I would say 2.5 hours, give or take. If you know what you're doing, it really shouldn't take you longer than that. But most people are like, how does that rule work? Or what does that do? Or I don't know how that works. Like, that's the biggest problem with I would say every game in our industry is people not really being 100% sure how the rules work. So
Yep.
I'm going to throw out a thing which is perhaps a little bit more for sort of focus on my age and why I'm playing these games. And that's I'm going to play a game with a friend to spend time with the friend. The
Mhm.
game's the excuse, really. So
to keep his memory sharp.
I've certainly moved on from like looking for a pickup game in a store, and I've moved on from playing in tournament. I used to play in tournaments a whole bunch, probably
Yeah.
up until about 2010, mainly because I could get 5 games in. So playing the game was the important part. Mind you, over that time, I met a lot of great people. I played against a lot of great people who are now still friends, and I can go to Adepticon and hang out with them, but not playing the tournaments anymore. So I think I know a lot of the games that I play now, if the standard is 2 hours, it'll probably take us 4 hours to play a game, maybe 3 hours, just because we'll be gas bagging the whole time. If the standard is 45 minutes, it'll take us an hour and a half. And I think it's a lot of what we do is it's got to be what to expect and understanding what we used to talk about it a lot. Talk about what the social contract is.
Yes.
Should we be expecting a quick game with somebody that we don't know, that we've never met before? Should we be expecting them to know exactly what they're doing? If you're in a tournament situation, probably yeah.
Yeah.
If it's a completely random pickup thing. Sorry about that texting sound. I'm not sure if that's coming through on the microphone.
It's all right. We don't care.
I definitely heard that
but-
distant ding.
There's a little ding. Yeah, my wife is. I'm in the group chat where my wife is organizing which days she's going to be doing drop off for my oldest daughter and in the carpool. So
And interesting when you talk about that, the social contract, because whether we like it or not, there is a social contract even with the guy that you are your first time playing with, and there should
Sure.
always be this this attitude of, I'm here to play a game. Sure, I want to win, but I want to have a good time also, and I want you to have a good time, because if you're not having a good time, I'm not having a good time, you're not going to come back. And we always want to foster a good atmosphere when we play. Go ahead, Jake. I saw you ready to go.
I was gonna say that whole sentence together is the most important part. It's
Yes.
I want to have a good time, and I want you to have a good time. Like we're here to have a good time. There are so many people like we've all heard about these people like losing their minds and whinging about rules and trying to min-max stuff and rules lawyer. Like that whole attitude. It's one of the reasons why I don't do competitive play. Like Dave said, up until I would say 2010, 2012, maybe 2014, like I was still doing competitive, like I was a ranked Space Marine player. I don't miss those days because over the last
now Jake is just rank.
Sure. Over that time period, you had people that sort of leaned into competitive play. I think it's one of the things that hurt War Machine. I think you had people that were worried about like, I need to show up with my guys and I need to win because that's what I'm here for and that's what I've spent all this time and, to your point, all this money on. And you're like, yeah, but the hobby is the time. Like I bought, Troll Bloods because I thought they looked cool and I wanted to paint them. And now that I've had them painted, I want to put them on the table and, move my little dudes around. Like that's the whole reason why anybody does anything with miniatures.
Yeah.
But so much of that just gets lost. It gets trampled under this like competitive mindset where people are like, well, I have to win. And I'm like, settle down, dude. Like let's ease up. Like we're all here to have a good time. Let's roll some dice and I want to see what your army looks like. Whenever I see some guy that has a 3-color army and he showed up, or he has a bunch of 3D printed stuff and he's like, yeah, I'm just here to like, kick butts and chew gum and whatever. I'm just like, oh God, I hope I don't play you. Like, it's
There
like
was
that
a
guy's he's not here for a good time. So
there was a. I always go back to this. I was playing in a steamroller back when it was War Machine Weekend, back when it was still in the game store before it got moved to a convention hall, and we were playing this, and it was a big one. It was back in like Mark II or whatever, and I'm playing this guy, and he's sitting there, and he's actually sweating, and his hands are shaking, and he's like, doesn't. I'm like, stop. Let's stop. Just take a break. I need you to step away from the table. You are not having a good time. You are clearly nervous. You've got something going on. What's going on? He's like, I'm just nervous. You're a really good player and you've won stuff. And I'm like, throw it out the window, dude. We're here to roll dice. We're here to just make pew pew noise and move models around the table. Sure, we all want to win. It feels great to win, but you just gotta you take some deep breaths and get back to it because that's not the point of this. Um, just have a good time with it. And it always comes back. 'Cause I was like, but he's like the clock. I'm like, it's my turn. I'll take the hit on the clock. You need to relax because this is just a game.
Right.
And like we've got to get that mentality. Mizzy is very much not a tournament player. She enjoys the narrative aspect a lot. And so Mizzy can speak on that all day.
I'm
Of
here to
tournament.
show up with I'm here to show up with my air balloons and Leroy Jenkins my way into a dragon.
Yeah.
that's always, and that's the stuff that everybody forgets. Like, the competitive players forget, like, the crazy wacky stuff, like Dave killing 43 guys with a heavy bolter, or Mizzy like throwing her balloons into a dragon. Like, that's the stuff people are like, oh my God, did you see when this happened? Or, hey, you remember that game where, like, no one's like, well, one time I went to a tournament and I absolutely made a soup can out of this kid that was there for a friendly. And it's like, why? Like, that, who cares? Like, that's not the fun part of the hobby. But
Don't be a jerk, man. Ain't nobody got
Yeah.
time for that.
Which leads into the segment of the evolution of the game is we're now seeing more and more narrative games and narrative events at conventions.
Yep.
It is becoming more prevalent. War Machine is doing more. The 40K friendly, which I hear is a ton of fun, and it sells out constantly at Adepticon. And that would be the only 40K event I would play at Adepticon if I were to get it back into it, because it sounds like a blast. It sounds fun as shit.
I will say, like, in regards to that, because I know a lot of people, like, you're a Pepsi guy, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
a lot of people grew up and it was like, I either like Warhammer or I like War Machine. You can't like both. And I'm like, that's stupid. You can like both of them.
Yeah,
There's
you
no
can.
reason not to, especially now. But the biggest thing I would say about the 40K stuff, I would say this about all of the events at Adepticon. All of the organizers know what they're doing. They do a great job. A
Yeah.
bunch of my friends play in the team tournament. The 40K team tournament is awesome. The Ada Sigmar team tournament is awesome. The Horus Heresy events are great. The John Schaefer, a buddy of ours, runs all the Necromunda stuff. Like, they're like, we had Jeff on and his partner last week, talking about the 40K friendly stuff. I think that if you were playing at an event, if you were going to go to a big show and play, LVO is not where I would go.
Mm-mm.
And it's not a knock on them. LVO is a competitive tournament. That's the scene.
Yes.
If you go to Adepticon, there's plenty of competitive stuff, but the community understands that there is an expectation when you're here. So it's like, this is a family fun theme park. Everybody can go on the rides kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
that's Adepticon. So I think going into it, you already know, like, okay, like, if your guy who we were playing the War Machine, the steamroller against, I feel like if he went to Adepticon, I feel like he would be less nervous because that's kind of baked in. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the expectation when you go. But again, to be fair, that's on us. That's on us, like me as a store owner. That's on, you as an event host. Anytime you guys are doing something like that and there's a community, part of our job is managing that community so that everybody has a good time, not a couple, and there's not a couple of random dirt canoes that are like making everybody's life miserable over the next like couple of hours. Like, no one wants that.
Oh, I mean, I talking about that, people, recording games so people can watch. And I've had people come on, a stream or whatever, and it's like, that guy's a dick. And they're like, no, you just don't know him. And I'm like, no, if someone outside of it can say this guy's a dick, he's a dick. And, maybe have a talk with him, or, don't put him on stream anymore because, it looks bad. Um, and which is, goes the interesting situation is this last weekend, I went to one of our local game stores, and they were running a steamroller, and the attitude has completely shifted. It is a tournament, but the attitude of everybody playing had changed. They kind of relaxed the points. They, made it more accessible for everybody to play. And people were like, "I have a question," and they're like, "Oh yeah, it does this." Like, okay, cool, and they just went on. It wasn't like two people were going, "No, it does this. No, it does that. You're a butt hair out." That type of, that old school mentality of tournaments was gone. Which, as someone that's built a community, ran an event, that's what I want to see. I want to see people having fun, people enjoying the game, because they're going to come back to the store.
I miss the old rubric that Games Workshop used to do. So if you played in a tournament, you could win best general, which is like I won the most games. Okay, cool, best general. And then you could win best army, and it was kind of an amalgam. It was like, what did it look like? How is it constructed? The paint job, how is it put together? Look, is it unified? Is there like a theme? And then there was best sportsman. And then the idea was that best general, okay, you won something. Best army, you won something. Best sportsman, you won something. And then there was best overall, which was whoever had the highest aggregate amongst the categories. And my favorite thing was if you had some guy who's just an absolute shitbird who has been stomping everybody and is kind of a dick to play against, and nobody's having fun with him, and he's like, well, I went 5-0 or whatever, and it's like, okay, and he's like, I had 5 major victories, I had the most amount of points, I got all my secondary objectives. He could not win grand champion because his sportsmanship scores would be trash. Like it wasn't possible. You had to be a good, at least at the very least, a decent person who was also a good player, and your army didn't look like garbage, like in order to win that. But we had guys like routinely would be like, oh, he won grand champion. Well, where did he come in? Well, he had the 6th best record, he had the 2nd best army, and he had the 2nd best sportsmanship score. And his aggregate was the highest. He's the grand champion. Like, that was awesome, and it kept people in line. If you just wanted to show up and punch down, cool. You could maybe win best general, but that's all you were going to get. You would never win grand champion. So I think bringing back that rubric and kind of, encouraging good play is the best way to put it. I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well, I mean, we got to police. I mean, as this still goes in the evolution of gaming, whether we like it or not, we've got to police our area. If someone's a dick, we need to call it out.
Yeah.
If someone's treating someone else and, like it says, punching down, we need to call that out. It's like, guys, you can't do this to this guy. This guy's brand new. If he's not going to come back and you're the reason why, I don't want you here. I don't want to play you. I don't want you around this, because we need to bring new players into the game, whether we like it. It doesn't matter what game it is. If you're not bringing in new players, your game's not going to survive. I mean, you've got to bring in, and the store's not going to survive either when it comes to getting, paying the bills. Because, I mean, there's many a times War Machine players, they would buy their army. And of course, Privateer Press wouldn't be bringing anything out for, years for that one faction, because it was, I would quotes around it, complete. I mean, I know people that they bought their army and they were done for 5-6 years, never bought another model. And I'm like, where are they going to keep getting money in? Because they got to keep getting money in to keep going. So, I think that's it. Is we as hobbyists and as players need to make sure we police our community and say, listen here, you're being a dick. Change it, or we're not going to let you play, or we're not going to play with you, and you're going to be by yourself. And if the guy's willing to change, good, because he may not know it. He may not have the social cues or the social standards, or not know that. I'm like, but you've got to grow it. And you tell those people. I mean, I've had to contact one of my guys, and he was on the spectrum. I said, this guy, and it was like, hey, some of the things you're saying just aren't right. And he's like, what? And he's like, oh, well, shit, let me change. And now he's one of our biggest event organizers and brings everybody in. Because he's like, oh, I didn't know that was the way it is. And I'm like, well, he does. And now he brings tons of people in, and he runs tons of events. But I mean, that's just, we've got a culture. We've got to make that culture acceptable for everybody.
There's been I think a big part of it is there's been a big disconnect, I would say, over the last maybe 25, 30 years, probably more significant over the last, I would say maybe 15, 20. And it's because people have gotten so used to the idea, whether it's from the pandemic or pre-pandemic or playing games online, there's like you always hear about like, oh, so and so was getting harassed when they were playing, insert game here online, or they felt like they were getting bullied by, X, Y, or Z. So when you now transition to playing a game face to face, people like don't know what to do. Like they haven't developed that skill set. Like you haven't built up that callus from like repeated use. Whereas for you, me, and Dave, Mizzy's younger, so she didn't have to deal with this. Like we started doing games in person, and that, like, I mean, when I played video games back in the day, like, Nintendo wasn't online. I was playing Legend of Zelda like in my mom's basement or whatever. Like I wasn't dealing with other people. But when we went to the store and played Warhammer or D&D or whatever, it's a social game. Like you need to have people to play with. And I think that a lot of people have a tough time understanding like how do I talk smack in this game? How do I interact with this other person that I don't know across the table? And it's a cool opportunity because I tell people all the time, like part of our hobby is not just collecting cool toy soldiers. It's collecting like memories, and it's collecting like experiences and hopefully like new friends and new people, even if it's just new people to play with. Like that's part of the hobby.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you like it. It's part of the hobby. So
last thing I want to touch on, and we got roughly about 10 minutes. We can go over on this. It's not a big deal. And all four of us have had to deal with this, and it is the reoccurring and thing of material for models and the grouping and ballooning that's coming out of 3D printing. Don't get me wrong. I love 3D printing. I think it's amazing. I will print whatever I can, but I know that I always need to support my local game store and support my game companies. There's not a lot of games that I have that, I would 3D print an entire army. I know that, Jake, I know Jake is just edging. He's just waiting his turn. I can see his eyes. He's just waiting his turn to talk about this. Because my thought on it, if the game is meant to be 3D printed, aka Trench Crusade, Malediction, fine, no problem. If it's a 40K game or War Machine or anything like that, I don't have a problem with like people printing like shoulder pads, helmets, that type of thing to enhance it. But the new thing of, printing out your entire army is, and when it's not supposed to be, is a whole different ball of wax. But, like I said, Trench Crusade, they embrace that. But they're also a kit bashing thing, so you got to buy models from somewhere else. Malediction, you have to buy their STLs. Those STLs are going to get leaked somewhere, and people are just going to pirate them and just take them and print whatever. But this whole aspect of 3D printing, I can 3D print models that look better than some companies now. So Jake, I know that I want Dave to cover the monetary aspect, but I want you to kind of cover the store aspect. I'm gonna let Dave have it first because he knows the money side of it.
Oh wait, no, go to Jake first because I thought you were going to go to him, so I haven't got anything planned. I've just been like holding up things like this is a 3D printed Space Marine head. There we go.
All right, so Jake,
these guys are 3D printed.
As a store owner,
an expensive plastic box.
All right, you're sure? Like you signed up for this?
Yeah.
Well, 5 minutes. You got no more than 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. All right, you okay. So as a store owner and as a hobbyist, our buddy Rick told me one time, he's like, part of the reason he thinks that I have such a unique take on things is he's like, you have three perspectives that not everybody has. He's like, most people have one of them. He's like, so you're a hobbyist. He's like, so you've been collecting forever. You're into stuff. You like it. Like you're the hobbyist. And I said, right. He goes, and then you have the like professional, like you've worked on the other side. You've worked for some of these companies. So you understand the corporate take on it. He goes, and then you're a business owner, specifically a retailer, and you carry a lot of this. He's like, so you have all three perspectives and you're able to kind of blend them together. So my take would be, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything wrong. If there is a need, I think 3D printing is a cool technology. We all have aftermarket stuff like this was handmade. This is not quite infringement, but it's super cool. Like I think that's awesome. I have 3D printed shoulder pads that have the Flesh Eaters badge for all my Space Marines. It's not something that they make. It's not something they've ever done. Dave's got heads. I've got like weird weapons and stuff that I wanted a specific way. I've got the old school Raptor jump packs because I like the way that they look. I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with, again, it's the garnish. It's the, what do you want on your hot dog? Like mustard, ketchup. Well, I want sauerkraut. They don't have sauerkraut. Okay, cool. Like that's fine. As long as you're getting the hot dog from the company, that's fine. If you are not doing that, you are not playing the hobby. Like you are doing something else. It'd be like if it's counterfeit money is literally what it is. If Dave wants a box of Space Marines and he buys them from me, my company gets money in the till, which pays my employees and it keeps the lights on. And then Games Workshop gets a chunk of that money because they designed them. And then UPS gets a chunk of that money because they delivered them. So it's money that's going back to the community. When you 3D print something, you're basically downloading free movies. Like you're not doing anything. You're not a member of the community. You're not helping the community. Like you are just a scab that wants to play Warhammer or whatever, but you're not. Again, I'm saying from the ground up, if you're like, I 3D printed my entire army and
entire
I
Space Marine
rules,
army, or
Yeah, we want to make sure this is clear. Jake is not talking about somebody that has selling STLs. He's talking about someone
I'm
copying someone.
An established company.
Yes.
So if you're like, oh, I downloaded my entire Eldar army. Okay, I downloaded the rule book. A buddy of mine had a code. I downloaded the codex and I printed it out, or I have it on my tablet, and I didn't pay for it. I just got it. And then I 3D printed my entire army. Again, I don't know what you're doing. You're not playing Warhammer, but like that stuff drives me nuts. Like if it's not something that you can do, then don't do it. Like, or figure out a way to make it manageable or come up with a plan. But to basically pirate your entire experience, that's not the experience. Like that's not what it is. Like you're not really doing it. On the flip side, I would say companies that try to go all STL, there's a slippery slope there as well. So between us and everybody watching, I know that Trench Crusade was actually trying to figure out a way if they could take back control of their STLs. And they were talking to specialists and experts in the field, and is there a way to do this? And they were like, nah, son, like the genie is out of the bottle. There's no way to do that. So, because originally it was like, we want to do this cool idea. Yeah, it's all free. We just want to make this thing. And now that they've done it, it's like, oh, there's money to be had there. This could be a business. And it's like, you could have either done a cool thing or started a business. You can't do both at the same time now that you've picked one. Like you kind of had to choose when you were going to Kickstarter. But yeah, I think companies that are free use STL or one of my favorites is there's so much stuff now that's miniatures agnostic. Cool. Like do whatever you want. Oh, I got this old Ralpartha metal guy and I downloaded a 3D bit and I found a couple Space Marine pieces in my store's bits box. That's awesome. Like that's a different hobby. But I think if you are trying to figure out a way around the paywall that exists for the games, like again, I'm not a fan. I don't think there's a place for that in our industry. And I'm not talking about accessories. We're talking about, again, it's the toppings on the hot dog. If you are trying to, 3D print a hot dog, like knock yourself out. But like if you're just trying to like tweak your game, awesome. If you're playing an STL game, awesome. If you're just trying to free print a game that exists that's not yours, that's just theft.
Yeah, because I mean, there are plenty of times there's plenty of groups that are like, I 3D printed an entire Warlord Titan. I'm like,
get out of here.
Oh.
I hope it looks cool in your bedroom.
So what? Before we go to Dave, what is your rules about 3D printing at your store? Have you run into that?
If it's something that's it's the same thing as proxies in Magic. If it's something that you're trying out or you weren't sure or there wasn't a way to get it, I'm fine with that.
Oh, okay.
If it's something that's readily available and you just decided to 3D, like some kid came in and he had 3D printed rhinos. And he was moving around. It was like bright yellow. And I remember being like, what color did you paint that? And he goes, oh, I didn't paint it. And I picked it up. And as soon as you pick it up, I was wait, nothing. And I was like, I turned it over and on the bottom, it's got all the filament lines.
Yep.
Because it, printed a certain way. Yep. And I went, what is this? And he goes, I 3D printed a rhino. And I was like, why? And he was like, oh, it was like, I didn't have the money to buy a rhino. So then I'm looking at the rest of his army and I said, how much of this is real? And he was like, that squad of Space Marines is real. That Squad of Space Marines is real. That character's real, but I 3D printed his arm. And I was like, okay, cool. And then he's like, that's 3D printed. That's 3D printed. That's 3D printed. And I was like, don't ever bring that stuff in here again. And he was like, what? And I was like, again, if you're just testing it out, or if this is something that you're trying to, like, I've never used a Rhino Rush army. Like, that's fine. I was like, but, and part of this was also because he wasn't a customer of mine. I'd never seen this kid. He showed up to a tournament. So I was like, you should shop where you play, so you are supporting your local community. Now, obviously, if you travel across the country to a tournament,
yeah,
whenever I go to a store, I always buy something. Even as a store owner, I can always get it for myself, but I always buy something because I am patronizing your store. I want to support you. I want to see us. A rising tide lifts all ships. I want to see everybody do well. But if you show up and so this kid had 3D printed stuff, and I told him, I was like, you can finish this game. Don't ever bring this stuff to a store. And he was like, why? And afterwards I talked to him and I said, you're not helping the community. You're not supporting the hobby. I said, so you basically stole stuff that doesn't belong to you, printed it, and brought it into the store, and you didn't even take the time to paint it. I was like, so, like, what are you doing? Like, you're not really playing Warhammer. Even if he had spray painted it and be like, oh, I painted a logo and I painted the bolters on top. Cool, 3 colors. That's fine. Tournament legal. He didn't even bother.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's my take on that. I'm fine if you were like, oh, I've never run. I wanted to give my sisters and make them all Dominions with heavy flamers, and I didn't want to buy another box, so I 3D printed heavy flamers and I magnetized the arms. Sure, okay, like that's fine. You already bought the sisters. I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? Like you're still, as long as you're shopping here and you're buying stuff or you're helping out the game or the community or whatever, that's fine. But if you're 3D printing, you're not doing that. Like you're just not.
Yeah.
Dave, what's your take?
My take on that is it's pretty much the same as Jake's. No real surprise there.
I rest my case.
Fun.
I rest my case.
I'm gonna bring it back to the idea that we talked about before, talking about the golden age of gaming. So many different miniature games that we can be playing. New miniature games coming out all the time. Some of them are made by companies that want to sell miniatures. Some of them are made by individuals who just want to write rules. So something like the 1490 Doom game is there will be STLs for that. They're interested in having some cool minis for their game, but it's not essential. It's a miniatures agnostic game. But they wanted to write the game. The game was the important part. There are, when we talk about I did this because I couldn't afford to buy 4 rhinos. So I printed 4 of them for $10 instead of however much 4 rhinos is now, $200 or whatever. If you can find 4 rhinos in a box. If you're, there's a sort of, we're in an age as well where we can get so much information so quickly. We can change our minds quickly. We can make decisions that we don't have to hold to, which is very different to 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when we didn't have social media, we didn't have, the internet wasn't as prevalent, when we had to make decisions. It's like, okay, I'm going to play Space Marines, and you played Space Marines for 8 years because that's what you could afford. You could buy that army over a 4-year period, and that's what you played. There wasn't a rush to try something new, to get something new, always have something new. Everything was much more settled. But now there's so much information, there's so many options that there are options that people can afford. They think that then, okay, I should be able to afford everything. It's my right to be able to afford everything. No, it's not.
That's not how capitalism works.
It's not how capitalism works, exactly. But if you want to be a part of you want to be involved in playing a game in the universe, like the 40K universe, for example, has Kill Team and Necromunda, which are both, as long as you're not buying the books for Necromunda, both affordable games to get into, because you need a box and a book kind of thing. Games like Trench Crusade, if you have a friend, if you have your own 3D printer, or if you have a friend who's got a 3D printer, you can buy the files and get them printed. No doubt over the next 2 or 3 years, they'll come out with their own boxes. But you don't need a lot of models. We've got a lot of games that we can go to now where that gaming experience, that excuse to hang out with your friends, is eminently affordable, and you can support either the company that's making it or the companies that are selling it, the retail stores, and be part of the community. And you're still able to do that because of the options that are available to us. So I think it's an important thing to realize that you don't have to be a part of everything. Pick the things you can be a part of and be a proper part of it.
Yeah.
Be a hot dog connoisseur, to really stretch Jake's metaphor.
Yeah, again, it just makes sense. Like you can insert whatever you want. It's pizza, right? Whatever your toppings are. That's fine.
No, I was just getting used to hot dogs. You don't
Use hot dog,
change
it
the
doesn't
pizza
matter, it's
now.
irrelevant.
But then is it a Chicago dog, or a backyard barbecue dog, or
Whatever.
It's a backyard barbecue dog, of course. That's the only way to go.
I also think to
Because you can
just
burn it
attack-
as much as you like. Sorry.
just to tack onto that too with Dave, I also think that there's a really big piece that people stumble over too, which is like, so that guy with the 3D printed stuff, I was like, is this your 3D printer? And he goes, yeah. And I said, what do you have? And he like went on this whole tirade. And I was like, do you have a PlayStation 5? He was like, yeah. I was like, then don't talk to me about how you don't have the money for this. Like, you know what I
JP
mean?
made that argument in there too. He's like, he spent $200 on a 3D printer. He could have spent $200 on a half dozen models.
But again, like it's this weird, and Dave's right, it's this weird sense of entitlement where it's like, well, I should be able to have all the money and get all the things. And it's like, that sounds great. I guess get a better job or have a budget or like plan better. Like
in Toy Soldiers, apparently.
Yeah, or just tell Santa what you want for Christmas. Like when I was a kid and I didn't have a lot of money, that's how I got stuff. Like I would tell my mom and my aunts and my uncles.
I still do that now.
Yeah, that's just if that's how you have to plan, that's how you have to plan. Like hoping that you can just 3D print everything is just it's so weird. Either take part in the hobby or don't. And again, we're talking about specifically printing stuff that is not yours. Like not adding on, not spicing up your army, or I'm gonna print these cool wolf heads or whatever. Like that's totally fine. Whatever toppings you want to put on, again, that's up to you. But yeah, if
Shadow Sword,
taking part of the hobby, that's part of the deal.
Shadow Sword brought up a good thing that with War Table and all the online Able's away, because I know a lot of people play 40K online to test a lot of things. There's where you can test all your stuff if you really want to test out things.
Sure.
Not that it's perfect and great, and it's not a good example, but that's another way that you could test out an army or a unit specific thing. Like, I don't want to go buy this unit because I don't know if they're going to perform well, but I want to see dice rolls and such. So that's another way. Do a digital version of stuff. So,
Yep.
Well, let's go and get into the media section. I'm going to flip us over to that channel and get us in there. And I flipped Dave and Jake just to be weird this time. But because I'm weird.
You work for it.
So Dave has been
know where I am anymore.
Dave has been here before, but we have two rating systems, Jake, for our how we rate movies or any media sections, no matter what. It can be, no matter your rating, it can be either closer to Casablanca, considered to be widely one of the most perfect movies, or closer to Cats, the movie, which is considered the worst movie ever made. And so you can do that type of rating scale, or you can do the Space Herpes scale. Have you know this movie? You know Space. Ice Pirates.
Ice Pirates is amazing.
Yeah, Ice Pirates is a classic and should be put in the Hall of Fame. It is that good.
A young Angelica Houston is in that movie.
Yeah.
A young Ron Perlman.
And so we rate it. The fewer the Space Herpes, the better. So if it's Casablanca, it'd be 0 Space Herpes. If it's Cat, it would be 5 Space Herpes. Is what how we would rate everything. And
That's
so
10 Space Herpes, let's be real.
yeah, and then Mizzy hated Ice Pirates. She wanted her hour and a half back.
Oh, and you're still on the show? That's crazy.
I know. I'm an enigma.
Fantastic.
So
Good for you.
this
It's
week,
been such a long time since I've seen Ice Pirates. I couldn't tell you.
Oh, dude, it's amazing.
But
It holds up. I watched it a
apparently-
couple months ago.
The only thing I could tell you is that there's a young Ron Perlman and a young Angelica Houston in it.
Yep.
You've never seen it?
I have, but such a
Okay.
long time ago.
So good.
It's such a bad, horrific, great movie is the best way to put it.
It's
Type thing.
basically they took an episode of Buck Rogers and they stretched it out into a full-length movie.
Yeah.
Right.
With
I
the
am
same
glad
budget.
that y'all enjoy it. I am happy for you.
the-
You do
The
you.
problem is, what if I rate something as Ice Pirates? Because for me, that's really good, but for Mizzy, it's really bad. So
We all know
Go
we
with
don't
the
want
ca-
space herpes, so we're
Go with the
leaning on that.
Casablanca cats scale. Do that.
That is
So,
middle of the ground.
I bit the bullet for everybody. I always bite the bullet for people to watch movies for everything. I have not seen Craven yet because it's still to buy, and I'm waiting for it to come free. When it comes free, I will watch Craven for you guys. But I did bite the bullet and watch Venom: Last Dance. It is
Oh.
supposedly the last Venom movie that we're supposed to have. It is part 3 of the Venom story, and this movie was ass.
Craven came out first?
Do what?
I thought Craven came out before Venom.
I don't know what the order they came in, but the Venom movie starts where the ending of Spider-Man: No Way Home is. So I thought that was cool that it all, with him sitting in the theater, sitting at the bar and drinking
Yeah,
and so on.
there's the credit scene. Yeah,
The credit scene, and it starts right there where he gets sucked back into his world. Cool. I thought that was nice. There is just way too many dick and fart jokes through this that Venom is, you can't take him seriously. You can't take anything they do seriously. You can't take anything that happens in the show seriously. The plot is all over the place. I mean, we got to stop this because of this. Okay, well, I have this, and I'm like, where the fuck is it? Who wrote this story? I mean, special effects are fine, don't get me wrong, but I mean, this story made no sense whatsoever. The characters, Venom is constantly like, "Oh, I got ADHD, Cal. Oh, this type thing," and you get pulled out of the scene too much. You're not engrossed into the movie and what's happening. And the plot just goes way off. Like they bring in the Venom universe where they bring in all the different colored Venoms, where it's the blue, the green, the purple, the red, and all this other stuff, and it just totally blows everything out. And I'm like, and of course, there's so much plot armor and so much MacGuffins in this that it's not even funny. And they have 2 after credit scenes. One of them, well, they're probably never going to do any more Sony Spider-Verse movies anymore, especially how bad Madam Web did, and then how bad this did. They're probably done, so it won't even really matter. I know they're trying to bring, Venom into the MCU. Great, I hope they do a good job with it. But please stop doing these movies. They're horrible. This thing is bad.
The problem is it's not Venom. It's not the Marvel stuff. It's that it's not Marvel Disney. If it's not Marvel and Disney, and I'll give Disney credit. Disney has basically left Marvel Pictures to themselves. It's like, hey, you guys are doing a great job. You're making money. Everybody's happy. You're following kind of Disney's code of conduct. Like, that's great. You do you. This is Sony.
Yes.
Sony Pictures is a disaster. They have the same problem that when Fox was making Marvel movies, anything that's not made by Marvel Pictures it's awful. Like
it's bad.
Morbius is from Sony. That movie's hot trash. Like the first Venom was okay.
It was all right.
The second one is okay. And it's mostly because, like, I love Tom Hardy. He's great. I think he's fantastic. His Eddie Brock is really good. They also tried to do almost like a Deadpool thing where they write Venom and Eddie as 2 different characters, even though Tom is both voices.
Yeah.
He's written as 2 distinct characters. So I think that's fine. You always have more dynamic when you write them as like a duo, because now there's like conversation and all that stuff. Because otherwise it's a lot of like Venom. Like Venom isn't Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man, you could have him in a movie by himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he fast talks and he gets nervous and he jokes around and he soliloquizes a lot, so you can kind of like figure out what's happening. Venom in the comics doesn't do that. Venom doesn't talk a lot. He doesn't let you know, well, I was thinking this. Like, that's just not how he works. So by having them as 2 distinct characters, you kind of can bring the audience along and like let them know what's happening. The problem is that
It's Sony
The
Pictures.
movies are a hot mess, and it's all Sony
Yes.
trying to like pack more stuff into it. Like that's why the movies fall down all the time. They're just
Oh yeah,
they
this
don't know
one
what
was
they're doing.
this one was horrible. It was bad. I almost fell asleep twice. It was so bad. Dave, you don't have to
gotta
raise your
say,
hand.
I didn't realize there was a. I didn't realize that there was a second one. I thought this movie was the second
This is
Venom.
the third one.
Yeah,
I totally missed the second one. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the first one, but
because that one was
The
supposed to
second
have.
one's not bad.
Second one had Carnage in it, and Carnage has always been one of my favorite Venom symbiote type creatures because he's supposed to be this sadistic mass murdering killing machine, and he's just like, oh, I think I'm gonna kill people today.
See,
I'm like,
I'm a bit of a purist. Like I like Venom. I don't like any of the other symbiotes. I was like, what? It's like they were like, hey, you know what's super cool? Spider-Man. Let's make 18 of them. And I'm like, okay. They're like, you know what's cool? Venom. Let's make 18 Venoms. And I was like, how about we don't do that? Like, let's
Yeah.
not do that. Let's just have Venom. We don't need 19 versions of him. Like this one's a vegan and this one's a serial killer. And I'm like, how about we don't? Let's just not do that. Let's just have Venom. Like,
yeah.
but
But-
Sony wanted to have all this extra stuff in the mix, and it's just
It felt bad. This one's getting like a 4 space herpes. There was some decent parts, but for the most part, this is a no-brainer. I bit the bullet for you. Do not go watch this. Craven is
so
next.
you're saying it was
doesn't
better
matter.
than Cats.
It
Just.
was better, just better.
nothing is as bad as Cats. Like that's a whole other bar. Like,
I'm still waiting for the butthole edition of Cats because that may make it into like a 4.5. For people that don't know, there was a rendition of Cat where they CGI'd buttholes on all the actors and actresses,
can you imagine being the executive who signed off on that?
or the guy that had to graph it and CGI all cat buttholes.
Oh, he probably doesn't care. That's a job. But like somebody was in a meeting, somebody was in a pitch meeting and went, hold up. Everybody knows that cats have buttholes. What if we digitally rendered buttholes on all the actors? And some executive went, run that. Like what? Like
So, all right, Jake, you got the first one. You're after me. What is something that you've watched, read, media related that you can give a review for?
recently?
It could be any time. Doesn't matter.
Does it have to be
20
Does it have
years
to be-
ago.
Does it have to be digital or can it be
No.
anything?
Oh, it can be anything.
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna grab it. It's on my shelf.
Okay.
Real quick, Gonzo. Other than Cats, has any movie gotten 5 space herpes?
Yeah. The ripoff of Pacific Rim, whatever that was.
Oh, Atlantic Rim.
Atlantic Rim, yeah. That was the
Very
other one.
original. Very original.
Yeah.
My favorite right now, I would say, like I just finished this series, or I'm in the second book now. It's by this guy Nicholas Eames. It's called Kings of the Wild.
Uh-huh.
Super solid fiction. If you like high fantasy kind of stuff, it's really cool. It's almost like a D&D party with a little bit of a sense of humor and a ton of realism. So like they all swear. There's a lot of like very adult language in it. But the whole concept is genius. So in this sort of universe, you join adventuring bands, and they're literally called bands. And then you have a front man who's kind of like the leader of the party, and he does it. It's like a cross between a touring rock band and an adventuring party. So a lot of the mechanics in the world work that way. Like you'd be like, oh, who's that? You're like, oh, that's Dave Taylor. He used to be the bowmaster that was with the 12 Hearts, and they slew the Chimera that was like rampaging through the Westfold. And you're like, oh, that's awesome.
It's true. That
Yeah,
happened
so,
that way.
so it's
Yeah.
it's really really cool. It's very well done, and I read a ton. I mean, this is just one of my like 9 bookshelves that are down here. But this one was really really good. I was on a trip with my wife out west, and she was going to do something like I like away for like the afternoon, and I was like, oh, I'll just hang out at the house and I'll get a book. So I picked this up, and it's amazing. Like I immediately fell in love with it. Just bought the second book. The third one's coming out at some point. But really 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 fun. Like super well done, very well written. Lots of action, lots of humor. Surprisingly, a ton of really tear-jerky moments too. Like there's some stuff that's really well written. There's a lot of like really cool realistic conflict There's a scene where one of the main characters
All right,
is
don't
having a
spoil.
familial issue. No, I'm not going to wreck
Okay.
anything.
Because I
but
just put that on our Audible.
Yeah, it's
Google it to make sure it was on there
let me
too.
know. Let me know what you think. But it's done really well. There's definitely a couple scenes that you're like, oh wow, he did a good job. Like Nick did an awesome job writing it, and it's presented in a way that's, again, it's something that's familiar, but it's a whole new take on it.
Yeah.
It's like the opposite of Venom, Last Dance. It's like,
Or the
it's
book I'm
something
listening to
you are
now.
familiar with. Yeah.
Are you still not done with that book?
No, a quick break. I'm still listening to the third Fourth Wing book, and I've stopped. It is that bad. I'm not even halfway through it. I listen to a lot of books. I drive like an hour or so to work every day, and this book is just horrible. Even the people that like the series are claiming this is the worst book. So I've stopped. I'm just gonna find what happened at the end of it. But Dave,
How it ends.
what is your media review?
My media review is going to be for a movie called that was released in 2022. Currently, apparently, it is not rated. We don't know what the rating is for it, but it's called The Lair. It is set in Afghanistan, and you start off with a couple of British pilots who get shot down by insurgents, and sort of have to try and make their way back to an allied base, I guess. And very quickly, there's just one pilot left, played by Charlotte Kirk. She ends up running into this spot that used to be held by the Soviets, and goes into this bunker, and essentially awakens like this crazy creature. It's a really weird, like really crappy mashup of a whole bunch of different movies. She escapes from the creature, and the creature. Do you think that the creature's been left behind in the lair? She ends up back in a really crappy outpost where there's a like Major Finch, I think his name is, and three other American soldiers, and then like three British soldiers who just happen to be sort of passing by, and that's essentially it. But the three British soldiers three of the soldiers are called Hook, Jones, and Bromhead. That are all names from Zulu, the movie Zulu, and actually historical names from the guys who are at the Rorke's Drift. So it's like, what? Why were they called that? I don't know. But their base gets attacked by a whole bunch of these creatures that have all managed to escape the lair, but somehow they know that if they hide inside this shipping container, they'll be fine if they go out in the morning because they'll have disappeared. And the end of it, the final sort of sequence, is just like, oh, this feels a lot like the end of Aliens, when Ripley and Hicks are going back in to get Newt.
Gotcha.
But it's a different spread of characters, and the medic is left up top with the winch attached to the elevator cage that they need to try and escape in. And it's like, there's just so many things where it's like, this is from that movie. This is from that movie. This is really... So just like Casablanca, right up there. if you like really terrible mashups of all sorts of horrible films, all sorts of wonderful films.
Wait, Dave. So you're giving this a good review?
No, it's a terrible movie. Don't worry.
Okay. I was like, just for comparison, and this is more for Mizzy's sake. Ice Pirates has a 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb. The Lair has a 4.6 out of 10. Like
that 4.6 is excessive.
And I wouldn't argue with that 5 point whatever for Ice Pirates.
So there we go. It is a 7 out of 5 space herpes.
My favorite- While Dave was talking, I was looking because I was like, I've never heard of this.
Avoid at your peril.
I was looking it up. I was like, I wonder if this is any good. And the first review might be the funniest thing I've ever read. This guy goes, I didn't want to bother writing a review and waste my time. However, the movie was so incredibly bad, I think it's only fair that I warn others. Don't waste your time watching this. Spoilers ahead. The lead actress, Kirk, decided she will co-write the story and then decided to act in it herself and be the heroine, but I have not seen worse acting in action sequences than hers. She acts like a civilian where she's supposed to be a captain in the British Air Force. It's rather annoying watching her fumble through with a constipated look on her face that she probably thought was a tough look. The script, the acting, the editing, the direction, they're all bad. For example, and then he gives a bunch of examples of like random scenes in the movie. And he goes, I love creature features, but this has none of the suspense or the thrill that are essential for such features to be successful. It does seem to copy a lot of other movie scenes.
That part.
Telling you. Yeah. it was bad.
Mizzy, what's your first one?
So I don't have a whole lot this week. I was busy with doing other things, but I did sit down and watch the new Daredevil
Oh.
on Thursday. So I am not emotionally attached to Daredevil like everybody else. I did not watch the original show. However, after watching the first 2 episodes, I'm going to have to go back and watch all of Daredevil now. Thanks, Gonzo.
It's so good. Like, I'm not a Daredevil guy. I'm a huge Marvel Comics fan. I've always liked tons of comics. Daredevil's just never been somebody on my radar. When they originally did the show, I was like, well, I'll check it out because I like that actor, and I was like, oh, I'll see what this is all about. For anybody who hasn't watched Daredevil, in the first season, I think it's like in the first episode or something, there's that one extended shot where he goes down the hallway trying to find that kid. It's one uninterrupted shot that's probably like 8 minutes long, and it's him just beating up everybody. It's unbelievable how well that show is done.
Yeah,
Right.
Shadow Sword. Yes, it is the reboot of the continuation of the Daredevil show, and they continue it pretty much right ever. The scene that you're talking about is an homage to the Old Boy, the Odd Boy movie, where they're filming scenes, and all fight scenes are like all done at one time, wide open shots, not this real close up or shaky cam, and that's what makes this series really good. So sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Mizzy. Go ahead.
That's okay. It is it's the reboot continuation, you said?
It's
Yes.
just a sequel. It's just a sequel. It's not a reboot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a sequel.
I was really impressed with it. If you watch the original, you're gonna get hit in your feels so hard within like the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Vincent D'Onofrio is great. Charlie Cox is an amazing Daredevil. I was introduced to him as Daredevil in watching She-Hulk and really enjoyed him there. It's a lot of fun, and now I'm just diving deeper into it, and I'm ready to see more.
So the guy who plays Daredevil, you said, what was his name? Charlie Fox?
Cox.
Charlie
Yeah.
Cox.
Cox. Was he... the only direct connection I have immediately is from something I've watched is in one of the Spider-Man films, the recent Spider-Man films.
Yep. He's the
He
same
showed
one.
up, was he the lawyer?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah. They've kept Charlie Cox as Daredevil from the Netflix to She-Hulk to the Spider-Man to now the continuation of Disney doing Daredevil.
Okay.
Looks like he was also in the Defenders in 2017.
Yeah, that was where they brought the 4 shows together into the Defender.
The Defenders is the Avengers series of the lead up movies. So like Avengers, you had Iron Man and then Hulk, like Iron Man, Thor, and then Iron Man 2, and then Captain America: First Avenger, and then they did the Avengers. So it's the lead up. It's the same thing with the TV shows. They did Daredevil, and then they did
Jessica Jones.
Jessica Jones and Luke
Mhm.
Cage, and then they did Iron Fist, and then they did the Defenders. It's the same thing. They basically just introduced 4 characters, and then did a show with them. I'm excited. I haven't watched it yet. I've been waiting. I've been so busy, I haven't had time, but
Oh,
I'm forward to it. I'm really
go look. I mean, and you watched the original Disney Netflix show. Yeah, it is. It they didn't miss a beat. The second episode is
There was a lot of concern because people thought they were going to change it, but the fans, like Mizzy said, Charlie Cox did such a great job. The fans loved it so much and really liked him that Marvel was like, cool. Like, we hear you. We're not gonna mess with this. So I really appreciate that they just rolled everybody over and
Yeah. My only one I have is I started it with Mizzy and Erica, but I decided to go and watch it on my own because everybody says it's a great series, and I was like, I got a quick 15, 30 minutes, while I'm eating or whatever, and I started watching, started continuing Frieren, which is an anime that's on Netflix, and it's an anime about an elf that outlives their group of adventurers after they've beaten their big bad world boss, and it's the elf living past all of those adventurers that died, and something big bad is happening again. And so they do these flashbacks with the old adventurers that she had and stories with them and such. And it actually starts off kind of slow. It's 28 episodes. I think I'm like episode 7 or 8 or something like that. But it does start off like a little slow because they're building up the story. But it's actually been pretty decent. You start to get into the characters, you start, liking them a little bit more, and you start feeling for them a bit more, and you start seeing where this is going, where she's now getting a new group of adventurers because elves are basically almost immortal in this world, and she's having to train and get new adventurers to go do this big quest again. Um, and it's a
on
little
Netflix.
quirky. Yeah, it's on Netflix. And it's actually been pretty decent. I'll give a final rating, but so far I'm okay with it. And it's only 30 minutes, so you can watch an episode and be happy about it, type thing. So, Jake, you got anything else?
I would say if anybody hasn't watched it, the secret level stuff is amazing. That's on Amazon Prime, I think.
Yep.
There's like a D&D episode that's amazing. It's a little weird, but it's good. There's an awesome Warhammer episode that any friends of mine who were like, I'm thinking about getting into Warhammer. I was like, do you have Amazon? Like, yeah. I was like, you should just watch this. Like, it is absolutely incredible. And even people who don't play Warhammer, but they've played like the Space Marine video game, Titus is one of the main characters in the
Yep.
bit. Like, it's awesome. But there's a ton of really cool episodes. There's a whole episode about like the weird. They have all the Agra mechs, and there's like all the not Tyranids kind of invade one. That one's really cool. Really, really fun. And then a show that I've been watching with my wife that we fell in love with is called Going Dutch. It's on network TV. I forget what network it's on, but it's Dennis Leary plays a colonel in the army, or a lieutenant colonel in the army, and they've kind of like shoved him onto this base in the middle of nowhere in the Netherlands. Like, he's a combat guy, and they stick him at this random like backwater like base, and it's really funny. I can't remember. There's it's Rudy something. I can't remember his last name. He's from Community. He's in it. He's like one of the main characters. It's really, really funny. It's classic sitcom stuff, but it's done pretty well. And Dennis Leary has always been really funny to me, so I enjoy that show. It's good.
It's on the Fox Network, and you can stream it on Hulu.
And they're like, it's season 1. They're like, I don't know, 7 episodes in or something, but it's been really good.
Cool.
Dave? You got anything?
No, I've been too busy painting miniatures. So,
That's kind of where we're all at right now.
Felt that.
yeah. I watch a lot of YouTube while I'm sitting here at my. But I have a lot of YouTube on while I'm painting my miniatures. So, yeah. I don't really
Mizzy,
get
you got
to
anything
look at other stuff.
The only other thing that I have is a quick trailer of The Last of Us 2.
Oh.
Holy snap. I am ready to die emotionally.
Mizzy has not played Last of Us 2, but I did. She wanted to know some spoilers, and I said, "Sure, you want to know some spoilers?" And she's
I
like,
know
"Yes."
enough to get myself in trouble.
And so she's ready to get herself emotionally hurt.
Yeah.
So, other than that,
Excellent.
Shadowsword wants to know what do you like to watch on YouTube while you're painting, Dave?
I watch. I have
Mostly
like
foot stuff.
Was that mostly foot stuff? No, it's too distracting. Too distracting. But I've probably got like a cycle of maybe like 20 different channels that I'll sort of scroll through. Either stuff like there's a channel called Thoughty2, like 42 but Thoughty2. There's a guy who does sort of research pieces on and presents it in a very sort of engaging and funny fashion that could be about I don't know, something to do with the Titanic or black holes or just completely random things about the universe. It's usually stuff that's happened. So he presents the story of what's happened, and it's kind of during it, it's like, here are what all these different people thought was the reason for it, and then by the end of it, you find out what the real reason was. There's a guy called Simon Whistler who has a bunch of different YouTube channels. There's places, mega projects, side projects, Into the Shadows. Again, all sort of crazy things that have happened in real life, crazy projects that are being built, all sorts of things like that. And then I watch battle reports for different games that I either play or would like to play. A lot of the way that I learn rules is by listening to people play games. So that can be super helpful for me. I've learned a lot about Trench Crusade, for example, from watching like the Dice Lab and who's the other one doing it? Miniature Game Montage, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. It is.
They're doing some Trench Crusade battle reports. So the first game that I played, it was like, oh yeah, this is super familiar. This is what will happen next, and this is what will happen next. Kind of thing. So yeah, just that sort of stuff.
Cool. Well, guys, we're coming at the end of the show. Do you want to do any pimping of anything coming out? Here is your chance.
Sure.
Go for it.
So Jake and I do a live stream called Build Paint Play Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. So just head to YouTube, look at search for Build Paint Play. Looks like that. Or where is it? There it is.
Oh yeah.
So we do that. We talk about all sorts of fun stuff. Josh is usually in the chat as well, so definitely cool. We're going to be at Adepticon in 2 weeks' time.
Yep.
Two and a half weeks, something like that.
Not yet.
Yep.
It's
Soon.
It's 2 weeks on Tuesday.
So yeah, if anybody's there, just come up and say hi. We'll have stickers. Yay. The Art of series of books. There's a series of books I publish. I'll have stickers for those as well. So come and say hi about those. We just made an announcement last week of our next 3 authors, which is super cool. Vince Venturella, Tim Marsh, and Natalia Orach.
Yep.
So excited to work with those folks and make some cool books. Yeah. Is that it?
Jake, you got anything?
I think so. Not really. I mean, the show is probably the big one. Like Dave and I are doing a bunch of stuff at Adepticon for the show. Like I said, I'm gonna do some interview stuff with the guys at Steamforge, Matt Hart, and the team over there, and probably get some other stuff lined up as well. Like a lot of times when we're at Adepticon, we usually talk to other folks that we know to try to line up guests. That's probably it. I mean, there's nothing else really. I mean, I would recommend anybody who wants to try a cool mini war game if you're a big fan of the old school Mutant Chronicles world. The Warzone game that Resnova puts out is now we'll have some for sale at Adepticon. So if you didn't back the Kickstarter, you can get it live and in person. We will also be setting up a web store after that. We want to make sure, obviously, that all the Kickstarter backers get taken care of first. But that will be coming. That's probably it. I don't think I have anything else really.
And if you happen to be in downtown Quincy, Massachusetts,
Sure.
drop in and see Alpha Omega Hobby.
Yeah, you can
Jake's
definitely
store.
shop at Alpha Mega Hobby. Obviously, if you have a friendly local game store, you should be patroning there. Like I said, that's we've talked about
Yep.
that. But if you can't find something, or if you don't live near a shop, I'm happy to
This is
help
my
people
local
out.
store.
So, yeah.
Well, guys, we appreciate you being on. We appreciate everything that happens here. As always, with More Than Dice, if you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. If you can do something, do something. If you can't, find somebody who will, because we've got to take care of each other. For More Than Dice, I'm Gonzo.
I'm Captain Mizzy.
And you two, what do you usually say at the end of yours?
Don't forget to build, paint, play.
Thanks for listening to More Than Dice, making the world a better, nerdier place, one dumb joke at a time. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. For more nerdy action or to connect with your hosts, check them out on Facebook.com/More Than Dice and Twitch.tv/more_than_dice. Until next time, stay nerdy, stay proud, and we'll see you soon on the More Than Dice podcast.